Hello, this is Unit 5 and we're in Part 2 now. Our learning target today is that I can multiply proper and improper fractions. So there are two different perceptions with multiplying fractions, and we're going to discuss both of them today. The first is that fractions can be thought of as division problems. In this case, you would look at this problem and you would say 2 divided by 3 multiplied by 3 divided by 4. And the second view of multiplying fractions is that fractions represent parts of things. So you would say 2/3 of 3/4. So let's start with fractions as division problems. So again, this is 1 divided by 2 multiplied by 2 divided by 3. Now, with this perspective, you can remember multiplication and division really work well together. So, because they're in the same problem, you could rearrange this problem to really look like this. 1 times 2 divided by 4 times 3. So, with this perspective, you would multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators, and then simplify. So I can put all my numerators together. 1 times 2 is 2, and 4 times 3 is 12. So I've done step 1, and then I need to simplify. I know that both 2 and 12 are even numbers, so we can divide 2 into both of them. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So our answer is 1/6. Now, with this, there is another step that we can add at the beginning that makes it easier when we're using large numbers. So if we have the same problem, and instead we think, let's divide the numerator and denominator by the same number so we can reduce before we multiply. And that helps us when we get to simplifying at the end. Often when we get to the end of doing it with this step, you don't have to simplify. It's always good to check just to make sure though. So here, I know I can take 2 into this number, 2, and I can take 2 into 4. So before I multiply, I would do 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So now when I multiply, I get 1/6, and it's already simplified for me. So here's another problem. Let's go with the premise that we're going to reduce before we multiply, and then that'll help us when we're simplifying at the end. So 2/5 times 1/6 is the same. It can be written just like this, and now we know we can divide 2 into one of the numerators and 2 into one of the denominators. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So when we multiply this out, we get 1/15, and it's already simplified. Okay, let's have you try a couple of problems. Again, you're going to reduce first if you can, and then you're going to multiply, and then you're going to simplify. Here we're talking about understanding multiplication of fractions as parts of things. So if you remember, we said that 1/2 of 2/3. And you will get the same answer no matter which perspective you go with, but it might be a different way that you understand it. So when we talked about multiplying in elementary school, we talked about the area model. So one of the numbers we wrote on the width, and one we wrote on the length. So here we have 1/2 on the width and 2/3 on the length. Here is the same rectangle, and you can see 1/2 is the width, and I shaded one of the 2 rows. So this is one shaded of the 2 rows. Here I have 2 shaded of the 3 columns. So 2 of the 3 columns are shaded. So when I overlap them, I can see that 1/2 of 2/3, they overlap, and we get 2/6. 2 parts of the 6 parts are the same. So our answer is 2/6. But remember, we always need to simplify, and they're both even. So if we divide 2 into the numerator and 2 into the denominator, we get 1/3. So 1/2 times 2/3 is 1/3. Looks kind of odd when we're multiplying fractions. We actually are getting a smaller product. Usually when we're multiplying, the product is bigger than the factors. But you can see that this answer is going to be smaller than either of the two factors. Okay, so let's try this one. We have 1/2 of 1/2. So if I think of this as half a pizza, what's half of the half? Well, that's easy. That would be 1/4. So let's try multiplying with our procedures. We have 1 times 1, which is 1, and 2 times 2, which is 4. So our answer is 1/4. You can see that either perspective, thinking of it as a division problem or thinking of it as parts of things, you get the same answer. Okay, and here's one for you to try. 3/4 of 6/3. Now remember, 6/3 is the same as 2. So if we think of that as 6/3 is 2, here's our 2 pizzas. We want to know 3/4 of the 2 pizzas. Go ahead and try that one. Okay, let's see how you did. If we're going to take 3/4 of this pizza, we're going to cross out that 1/4. If we're going to take 3/4 of this pizza, we're going to cross off that 1/4. So we could multiply out and see that 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 3 once, so we're reducing first. And then we can take 2 into 6 and 2 into 4. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now when we multiply out, we get 3/2, which is an improper fraction. So we'll make it a mixed number, and it becomes 1/2. Is that what we have down here? If I move this slice over here, we would have a whole pizza, and we still have another half. So this explains why you can think of one fraction of another fraction. You get 1/2 for your answer. Before you finish, tell me something that you learned or were reminded of, and a question that you have.